So, very big welcome to Denver Down Amateur Radio Club, and a very big welcome to Steve, KZ2I, who's joined us tonight. Steve was put in touch with us by our member Bob, N4XAT, and he had suggested Steve would be a very good speaker about DX and working DXpeditions and contesting and chasing DX. And Steve and I had a chat, it's a good few weeks ago now, Steve, when we first started talking about what club members would find interesting. So very, very pleased to invite Steve tonight. And I've made the point of saying to Steve in the last few days that we've got a number of us in the room here are going to be listening out very, very carefully for MM0UKI, Emil and Nobby, who are going to be on Rockall Island later this week, hopefully. They are setting off by sailboat on Friday from Inverkip in Scotland. It's going to take them 2 days to sail 400 miles to the island. And then they've got the very, very difficult task of actually landing on the rock and getting their station put up. So it's probably not going to be till Saturday or Sunday, if all that has gone to plan, that they actually get a radio station up. And they're going to be operating from 40 meters to 10 meters. And they're also going to do a bit of 2-meter work as well. They're going to be running CW sideband and digi modes, FT8, including on 2 meters. So there's an opportunity to work some DX there. And I know in our room tonight, we've got 1 or 2 people in the room fairly new to the hobby, only just started working DX and getting very excited about working DX. And I've said to Steve, it would be very helpful indeed for him to just talk about a few things which are very common in the DXpedition land. For example, running split, and what that means in CW and sideband, and how you can try and work that and take advantage of that to get that elusive contact when you think it might be impossible. So, Steve, I'm going to hand the microphone over to you and let you take it away.
Okay, well, thank you to everybody for having me. To me, it's a privilege to give us something like this. I also want to pass along my thanks from the South Jersey DX Association. I'm one of the founding members back in the 1970s, and I'm currently the vice president. And Bob put forward something, and I got nominated. So let me just give you a quick introduction about who I am. I've been licensed since 1964. I was 14 years old at the time when I got my novice class license, the U.S. starter class. I worked my first DX when I was a novice. I was running a 60-watt transmitter and a 40-meter dipole at about 20 feet. I did work 4 countries on 15 meters because it's a multiple of that 40-meter dipole. And the first one I worked was LA4CI. And as just getting started and not copying CW that well, I couldn't figure out what this guy's call was. It took me longer to figure out his call than to actually have the contact. But we eventually got it in the log. And I said, I can't believe that. That can't be true. And about a week and a half later, I received his QSL. So that was the start of it. I upgraded over the years. Right now, I'm an extra class licensee, so I have the top U.S. license. I have all privileges and all that. And I like rag chewing, but if I were to say what is my first love, it's DX. Second, contesting. Go in a few contests every year. Some of the contests are very helpful for picking up DX stations. CQ Worldwide and the ARRL DX contest. They have both phone and CW versions. So if you're not too hot on CW, You got a phone one to work with. Currently, I have 340 DXCC countries. That's all of them on phone and the mixed. I need 3 on CW, which is really an accomplishment for me because I never was really much of a CW operator. My buddy N200, who I grew up with, he was a CW operator. He could sit in his chair and work CW and carry on a conversation in the room, and it was amazing. I've got 5-band worked all states. I have 10-band DXCC. In other words, I have worked 100 countries or more on every band from 160 up through 6 meters. 5-band worked all zones. And I do a little contesting. I've won some of those, minor, as I go in as a low power class operation in the ARL sweepstakes, and I won that a few times. And that's what I like to do in a contest. I can't deal with the big boys. Okay. I can run a kilowatt. I've got amplifiers here. But my antenna is a 3-element tri-band beam, a stepper at about 12 meters. And nothing really, fancy. I have friends who have 100-foot towers and they're always bragging what they're working. I say, oh, sure, you got that. If you don't work it, there's something wrong. And that's about where I am. Okay, just to give you an introduction to me. Now, look at my list here. We'll start with DX. Everybody is DX. Depends on who you're talking to. And it also depends on what band you're working, what your mode of operation is, how much power, how much antenna you have. To me, what is DX might be outlandishly impossible to some people. I look at some of the guys in our clubs who have very simple layouts where they have an antenna, they have a restricted area where they live. They can't put up outside antennas. So they'll have dipoles in the attic and running low power, and they still can work. And that amazes me when they do that. And there's all sorts of clubs for low power and awards for that. But, it's DX can be anything you want. It just means long distance. On 2 meters, long distance could be 50 miles. On the HF bands, then you start stretching it out because it's the miracle of propagation and what a radio signal will do when it goes up and then comes down. Now, one thing I try to teach new DXers is listen, listen, listen. Okay, and that's an old adage that people have been trying to knock into people's heads for the longest time. You can't work somebody if you don't hear them. Okay, and when you listen, you understand how they operate. We'll get into split in a little while. You got to listen to them and figure out how they're working their split, or if they're calling for a particular part of the world. The last thing you want to do is butt in there. If they're calling North America, okay, you Europeans got to stand by. Or the Japanese are the best probably for doing that. They will stand by. They follow directions. And when I say Europeans, I'm sort of including you guys, but not really. It's more the ones in Southern Europe that we have a problem with. So listen, see how he works. Is he just working he wants signal report, that's all he wants? Or is he taking a short QSO and getting some facts from somebody? I always enjoyed talking to people, not for a long rag chew, but, talk to them briefly, find out what equipment they're using and where they are, if they're up in the mountains. I worked a guy that was in the Himalayas, And he gave me how high in the air he was, and I'm sitting at dead set sea level, 0 feet above sea level, and take the chance to talk to a DX station if you can. But other times, you'll tell. If you listen, you'll see. They're just running as fast as they possibly can to get as many guys in the log, especially rarer countries. And please excuse me for wearing this hat, but I've got an overhead light that glares off the bald head and probably would blind you. And you'll have to excuse me, my allergies are killing me today. Now, there's all sorts of tools that a DXer can use. Things like DX bulletins. There's some that are free, and there's some that you have to subscribe to. Some of them are online. Some of them are still actually paper that you can get. And they tell you what's going on in the DX world, who's coming on, who's been active, things like that. One of my biggest tools is a web cluster. They're on the web, and you can sign into them. And I won't go into all the particulars, but you can set it up so you're hearing everybody except who's in your country and what they're hearing and what they're working, or vice versa. If you want to see people in your country and what they're working, give you an idea of where the signals are coming from. And they are for all the bands, and they come in very handy if you're on 10 meters at the time and something pops up on 20 meters that you need, you change bands. But there's a couple big ones. There's DX Summit, which is the grandfather of all web clusters. It's in Finland. And if you go out to DX Summit, DXSUMMIT.FI, they're Finnish. And you'll see what it looks like. And basically, you learn it by playing with it. The one that I use the most, because DX Summit has a tendency to get a little crammed, is DXscape, SCAPE, DXSCAPE.com. And it's a Japanese web cluster. And they're very handy to see, at a quick shot, who's on and where and stuff like that. Now, as far as my second thing is, be patient. Trouble is with a lot of people nowadays, they're in a hurry to get it. They think they're going to work 100 countries right away, and it takes time. I gave my credentials earlier, but it took me 50 years to work all those countries. So, you got a lot more tools to work with nowadays than we did back in the 60s and 70s. Let me see. Why is DX chasing fun? It depends on who you talk to. I have various things that I'm trying for, DXCC and that sort of stuff. The thing that I'm having the most fun is on 6 meters, because it was something new to me. And not only can you chase countries, but you can chase grids on 6 meters. And to me, that's fun. Fun is meeting people all over the world that you normally wouldn't have anything to do with. And on the other hand, you work people that you have a lot to do with it. 4U1 ITU, the ITU headquarters in Geneva, was on one day, and I gave him a call, and we started talking. Well, you could hear the people in the background getting a little tired of me talking to the op over there. So finally, Joe, who's the operator, says, everybody, please stand by for a second. We'll get to everybody, but right now I'm talking to my son. My father was over in Geneva on business, And it was a way that we stayed in touch. I worked him. He's a silent key now, but I worked him from a lot of times from Finland and up in Scandinavia, the other countries, Japan, Brazil, Israel, and always got about the same reaction because we'd start rag chewing, and people needed it for a new country or something. So we had to, just, okay, guys, stand by for a second. I've made some of my best friends overseas. And the best part is occasionally they will come to the States to a major convention, and I actually get to meet them face to face. That's one thing about Zoom that is very handy. And again, I appreciate being invited, is that you get to actually see what the character on the other end looks like after knowing them for 20 years or something. So DX chasing, it's up to you. And that's what it is. Some people just don't enjoy it. The idea of getting the QSL cards is the most appealing part to some people because they enjoy seeing the beautiful cards from other countries, places they in reality will probably never visit. Good listeners, yes, that's for sure. And patience. And the last thing I give as far as my advice is, and it sort of goes with patience, know your abilities, both your station and yourself. Don't get unrealistic about what you think you're going to do. If you're in a big pileup for a rare DX station and you're running, 20 watts to a wire 10 feet off the ground, you've got a job ahead of you, as opposed to somebody who's got a tower at 100 feet and big beams and things like that. And I've always been a little pistol. Okay, I say I do have amplifiers now. I'm getting old. I needed help, but I worked my first 300 countries running barefoot. I did have beams. I will say that. My dad and I had our first beam was a TA-33 Junior on a chimney strap at about 25 feet. The highest I've ever had an antenna is about 40 feet. The current tower I have is about 36, 37 feet, mainly because we have zone restrictions here where I moved in New Jersey. And I could only put up a 35-foot tower. So don't tell them I'm a little bit over. But know your abilities, or try to get an idea of what you can do. Learn which bands are best. If you're running a very simple station with a wire and just a transmitter running a maximum of 100 watts, we were talking about this earlier, Nick and I. 10 meters, when it's open, it is absolutely amazing. You can work everybody and anywhere on 10 meters. And not only that, when the propagation is right, you can work places, but it's such a big wide band. You got plenty of room to move around and get in an open spot. 222. DX operators say that DX chasers need to be good. Okay, I'm going to switch over to DXpeditions now. These are very sometimes idiotic, brave, courageous, not normal people that go on these trips to some of these places. Now, you can go on a DXpedition to someplace like the Virgin Islands and be sitting in your nice air-conditioned hotel room and with a nice cold drink in front of you and having good food delivered. Some of these DXpeditions are not that at all. The recent one to Bouvet is a case in point. These guys planned for 2 years how to run and get this operation going, and they trained. I know personally 2 of the operators, and so some of the backstory that most people don't hear. what went on over these last 2 years. So these DXpeditions that go to rare spots, you got to give them a little slack, because if you figure a place like Bouvet, that is the #1 most needed country, that means there's a lot of people that need them. And if you've never heard a pileup from the other end, it is unbelievable. I went on one DXpedition in my life, and that was to Desistcheo Island, which is this little rock in the Mona Straits between Puerto Rico and Hispaniola. And we took a boat over there and we set up. We lived in tents. It was about 100 degrees the whole time we were there, with about 300% humidity, very little wind, except for one day. And being at the footstep of, right outside the United States, you can imagine how many people were calling us. I equate it to being in a closet. Picture yourself being in a closet with about 300 people all yelling at the top of their lungs. And that's what a DXpedition pileup sounds like on the other side. So if they don't come back to you, it's going to take some time. And that even goes for even some of the, easy to work stations. If you have, a few thousand people calling you, it's going to take a while to, you try to get some of the low power stations, but the easiest thing is work the loud ones first, and then we'll get to the little guys later. And that's why they work split. Now, most modern transceivers will have split capability. Basically, it has 2 VFOs in it. And the whole idea is that the DX station will operate on, say, 14.195. And he'll say something like, or she'll say something like, up 5 to 10. Well, that means they're going to be listening from 14.200 to 14.05 or wider, depending on how many people are calling. And the only reason we do that is so that they can hear somebody. By spreading it out over 10 to 20 kilohertz, there's going to be breaks where somebody will be there that the DXpedition can hear and pick out. The hardest part about working split is knowing how to do it with your radio. Okay. Every radio is different. I just got a Fox Tango DX10, and I had to relearn how to use split, only because the buttons are different. And they're little bitty buttons. And with the eyesight not being as good as it used to be, that can be a problem. And basically, you'll have 3 settings when you're working split. On your split control, you have it where it's not on split, where you're transmitting and receiving on the same frequency. Then you have an A and a B button, okay, where you can choose either your VFO A or your VFO B to be your transmit frequency, and vice versa for your receive frequency. The problem I have, and everybody else does eventually, is they find themselves transmitting on the wrong frequency. They don't have the VFO set correctly to the right button. When you're working split, again, here comes listen, listen, listen again. You can hear, which is the first thing. Make sure you can hear the DX station. Don't waste your time if you can't hear them. You hear a bunch of people and you can't hear them, you're wasting time. And you're also taking up space in the bandwidth, okay? You'll never hear me calling anybody that I can't hear. So you got that guy and you can hear him and it's great. And, wow, he's got a good signal. First thing you do is listen. Is anybody calling him on his frequency? It's quite possible they're just starting out and they don't need to work split. The easiest way to know whether he's coming back to somebody on his frequency, is listening for the other stations that are calling him. Now, they might be out of an area where you can't hear them, but if he comes back to enough stations, after 10 or 15 stations, and you don't hear anybody, assume that he's working split and start tuning up the band. And all of a sudden, you'll hear, gotta figure out where my hands go. You'll hear a group of frequencies where there's noise, and that's the guys that are calling him. First thing I do is I try to find a nice clear spot up there and set my transmit frequency button for that one. And so you can tell you have it right, because if you transmit and you don't hear anybody, or if you don't hear too many other stations on the frequency that you're on the correct thing, okay? And you tune up and down. The best way to get through a pileup is to take your time, listen, see if there's a pattern. Is he moving his VFO like 1 kilohertz at a time? Is he working 20 or 30 stations on a frequency and then moving his receive frequency? Is he moving after each one, up 5, like that? Where is the biggest part of the pileup? Is it up at the high end of the band or low end of the band? Excuse me. And you just have to, it's things you learn. And again, that's what I was talking with Nick. You always learn something in this hobby. You can't expect to know it all and, figure out right away what it is, what they're doing. So working split takes time. The main thing, if you're working split, just make sure you've got your radio set correctly. I would go into it, but every radio is different. If you have any questions on that, let me know, and I'd be glad to talk with you. My email address, by the way, before I forget to give it to you, is KZ2I. That's difficult, right? At AOL.com. If there's a question that pops into your head later on about anything I've mumbled about, please send me an email. We can talk that way. So you've worked at DX station. Now, how do you get a QSL out of it? Okay, it's a wonderful thing. If you're just looking for the verification that you made the contact and you don't want the pretty card, there's a wonderful thing that is out there now called Logbook of the World. The ARRL sponsors it, and I forget how many millions of contacts they now have there. And what it does is you send your log to LOTW. I'm very much simplifying things, okay? You send your log to ARRL, to LOTW, all digital, okay? Then the stations on the other end, who are also members of LOTW, are loading their logs out. LOTW automatically matches those contacts. Excuse me, this is just the allergies and talking too much. And you can get a QSL on LOTW, get it verified for DXCC, work both states. I don't think RSGB awards are on it yet. So that's another thing. But for DXCC, it's great. Now, as far as getting a QSL card from a station, of course, all the big DXpeditions, they have a QSL manager. And there's ways of getting a card from a QSL manager. I'm talking the physical card. You can send your QSL with a self-addressed envelope and currency of your choice. Usually US dollars is what most of them want, or euros. Send them paper money. Usually they specify how much they need to cover their costs to return the card. And in a while, you'll get the card back from them. There are other ways of doing it. There is a thing called clublog.org. And a lot of stations, especially DXpeditions, will put their logs out there. You can actually go there and without sending for a card or anything and verify a contact. Depends on how long a time between their loads up to club log are. But once their logs are up there, you can go in there and type your call in, and it'll show you the contacts that you had, that they say you had with them. Club log also has what is called OQRS. That's Online QSL Request System. When a station uses that, you can go in, like I said before, you find the station that you're looking for, enter your call, it'll come up with the QSOs that you have verified with them, okay, that are in their log. At that time, if they have OQRS, you can click on the contacts you want verified, go to the bottom, they will verify everything, make sure everything's, and then you'll be directed to PayPal. And you'll enter the amount that the QSL manager is requesting. Now, the thing with going this way, OQRS, is that you don't have to worry about things getting lost in the mail. When you use OQRS and you put in your PayPal, you're done. You don't have to send them a card. They don't want your card. Most of the DXpeditions, they don't need 30 or 40,000 cards that they're not going to have any use for. So if you hear somebody saying, "Oh yeah, QSL by OQRS," that's usually on Club Log. There are other QSL managers that have their own version of OQRS, but that's a handy dandy thing. Now, there's some people that insist on you sending them an envelope with money to cover the postage and everything. The problem with that is it can take a while. I've got, I think, 6 QSLs outstanding for over 3 months now. And that's actually not a short period of time, but it's a lot quicker with the OQRS. And there's a couple stations that don't have OQRS, but don't need your card, but they don't want you sending the money through the mail. So they will just say, okay, if you have PayPal, send me this amount and I'll send you a card. One of them is, for example, is XV1X in Vietnam. I've worked Eddie on numerous times. I think he requests $3, which if you were to figure out what your cost of mailing a card there and including return postage, $3 is a bargain. And he's very good. And those are about the main ways of getting a QSL. Be patient, because it can take a while. It's not going to be here the next week from a DX station. There's also the Bureau, which is the poor man's version of getting a QSL card. Bureaus have been around forever. The most famous bureau, I think, is probably Box 88 in Moscow. Back when the USSR was together, any QSL going to any of the Russian republics had to go through Box 88. This process would probably take end to end. You sending your card and getting a card back can be anywhere to 4 to 5 years. So when guys complain nowadays that, "Oh, I haven't got my QSL, I sent it 2 weeks ago," I just want to shake my head And, again, patience, another word I use a lot. As far as filling out your QSL, I have been a QSL manager, and the biggest problem I have or had was the people filling out the cards themselves. There's all neat little boxes that are all labeled. You have the call of the guy that you're sending it to. You have the date, which can be a little bit of a minefield because depending on what country you're in the United States, the standard is month, day, year. In most of the rest of the world, it is day, month, year. Sometimes they put the year first, but make sure that the box that you're putting the date in has a little date, day, month, year symbols of some kind up at the top when you have your QSL printed. That's always one thing I made sure of. Then the time. Please do not use local time when you're filling out a QSL. Use Zulu, GMT, UTC, whatever you want to call it, Universal Coordinated Time. That never changes. When you get into especially daylight savings time, and some places change, some places don't. So if somebody sends me a card with their local time, I could probably take a stab at finding it, the time, but it takes time. And make sure you use GMT or UTC or whatever you want to call it, and then everybody knows exactly what it is. Not only that, but make sure your clock in your computer or your log or whatever is also on GMTs. It makes it a lot easier. And especially if you have computer logging. I don't know how many people still use paper logs. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got 5 binders over here with every log I've ever written since 1964. I did sit down for a period of time and I digitalized them. I typed them all in, and I have now one log with all my contacts for 59 years. And I can, go into that digital log, and I can find every time I've worked a guy, all the vital information is right there at my fingertips. It's funny because I'll be in a contest, and eventually, some guys have their logs hooked up to the computer and with their contest log, and they, it comes up with your name when they work you, so they can call you by name. But make sure the log is the hardest part, the easiest part once you get used to it, and the most important part of working DX, working any station as far as I'm concerned. Now, why do people like to receive QSL cards? For verification, of course, is the number one reason. If you apply for any of these awards behind me here, you got to have some sort of verification, whether it's a card or a piece of paper with the data on it, or LOTW. You have to have the information. You have to have the verification. I also have, I will zoom over this way, right there. Those are my QSLs. I've got 12 boxes that have QSLs in them, with about 300 in each box. So quite a few QSLs, and it's fun to go back through them. Again, I have all the QSLs from day one, and it was funny because I ran into a guy here in southern New Jersey, and he said his name, and I said, I know you. And we were kids back up in northern New Jersey. We belonged to a club together. He gave his call. I said, Rich Hanzo. And he looked at me. I said, well, maybe you know me better as WB2VFT. My other call. And I went through the box, and sure enough, there was his card, and I brought it to the next club meeting. I said, "Say, yeah, I remembered you, right?" And it's a memory on a piece of paper, or it can be a beautiful card. Some of the ones I treasure are from my friends, of course, but I have a QSL in the box there from King Hussein of Jordan. I've got one from Barry Goldwater, who was a senator here in the United States, ran for president one year. Got a couple of the princes from Saudi Arabia. And it's always nice to show somebody who doesn't know what ham radio is also. I know my grandkids always used to like to go through them. So everybody has their reason for wanting QSLs. Quick thing, okay, all right, have we beat DX to death here? Let me see, I don't know. There's always something to talk about, and trying to squeeze it into, let me see, I'm coming up on the hour already. We'll switch over to contests. That's my second love. I'm not a big contester. I know some of them, and I've operated from multi stations, which is a totally different thing from working single. And it's fun because, especially if you're looking for something, I always tell people that are looking for in the United States, trying to work all states. Well, the sweepstakes contests, there they are. You could probably work all states if you were in the United States. It's only open to the US and Canada. But it's the same idea. When I started working counties, I would get in contests, either with the contest hunters themselves or other contests where you're working the states. I go in the all Asian contest occasionally, not full blast, but just to have fun and maybe pick up a country in Asia that I need. Contests are a good supply of operating stations in a country that you might be looking for. Of course, then there's the DX contest, the DX ARRL DX contest, and the CQ Worldwide. These are probably the biggest contests, and they are worldwide. I mean, DX ARRL DX contest is the rest of the world working in the United States and Canada. But CQ Worldwide, it's everybody works everybody. And you can pick up, countries real easy during one of the contests. They all have different exchanges. Most of them, they have a signal report, and I put that in quotes, because back in the old days, you actually did send a signal report. But as things got more competitive, people just started saying 5-9, 5-9, 5-9. You'll see a lot of DX stations doing that on regular contacts even, just so you have something to put in your log. And then there's another part of the exchange, which, depending on which contest it is ARRL DX, I send New Jersey. That's my state. For CQ Worldwide, you send your zone, your ITU zone. I'm in zone 5, England 14, 15. I never did get that right. And you go from there. And they're very quick contacts. And again, it's a matter of when you're working the contest, it's knowing your capabilities, know your experience. It's what was I talking? It's like learning to run a cash register in a store. I worked in a store a long time ago, and somebody gave me very good information and guidance. They said, the speed will come. When you're first starting, it's more important to be accurate. once you get to the point where you're constantly accurate, you'll find your speed will pick up. In the same way with working contests, take your time, work who you hear, who are loud. And then, because there's pileups there, it's the same story. Now, they normally in a contest, they do not work splits, so you don't have to worry about that. But you can work a lot of DXCC countries or WAE, the RSGB awards, and it's a good way to get them without having to search, a normal day band for somebody that might be on the air. And again, the whole idea behind them is having fun. Set yourself a target. If you've never been in this contest before, well, pick a number out of a hat, a realistic number. Say, okay, I want to make 100 contacts in this contest. Okay, you get close to 100, you can do it the next time. You find yourself at 200, you realize, hey, maybe I'm a little bit better than I think I am. It's not as hard as I think it is. So then the next year, you boost that again. Try to see, if you can increase your score every year. And set your own goals. That's what a lot of DXing and contesting is all about. Set your own goals. Don't try to be somebody else. Okay. It would be like me, my buddy N200, going in the CW contest, and I think I'm going to try to keep up with him. That is I'm just blowing smoke there, if you know that term. There's no way it's going to happen. It's unrealistic. I do my pace, and I take a lot more breaks than some people do, because I have a bad habit of sticking something in my mouth here. I got to have a cigarette every now and then. But know your capabilities. And I think that goes with everything, whether it's your equipment, your hearing. I can pick signals out of a pileup that even with my hearing not as good as it is, I can be in a contest with the guys from the club and I can pick out a signal that other guys aren't hearing. And make sense of it. That's one thing. Contest, DX, make sure you get the calls right. If you get into the habit of using the web clusters like DXscape or DX Summit, people are spotting. What happens is they hear something, work something, they send it to the DX cluster. It comes up on your screen. Don't always assume that they know what they're doing. Look for that call, but be sure when you work them that is actually that call. It happens a lot of times when there are 2 or 3 DXpeditions, and I mean big DXpeditions on all at the same time. And guys think they're working one station, and when in reality they work somebody else because it was spotted wrong. So be sure when you log a station, make sure you log it right. It sounds like common sense, but I hear a pileup and it's on a frequency that a DX station is supposed to be. I don't assume it's him. I want to hear his call. And a lot of times in a contest or in a pileup, they don't give their call every time. So you got to be a little patient and keep your ears open for when they send it. Any other ramblings I could possibly throw in here for you, Nick? Is there anything that we talked about that I missed?
I don't think so, Steve. I mean, I think you've given a fantastic range of different ideas to people, and I know
it's tough in an hour to
exactly.
and that's what I said.
Yeah.
KZ2I at AOL.com. If you know what QRZ.com is, all my information is there. If you have any questions, if you have a long extended question or you just want to say, I didn't understand a blinking thing you said, let me know. I have always wanted to be a teacher. Teachers are my heroes. I've on many occasions been told I should have been a teacher because I take time. I was an education supervisor in the computer room at the bank I worked, and that was exciting. And it taught me things. One of which is just what I was saying. Everybody's different. I had a whole curriculum of videotapes and everything that I used. I had about 25 people come through my class and graduated and went on to be computer operators and everything. Then I had this one young lady, and she just has this different way of thinking. And I had to learn how to teach her. She went on to become a very good computer operator. She became a computer room supervisor, then went into programming, and then she married me. So she does silly things occasionally, but she had her own way of working and of understanding things. And sometimes, I can get on here and I can babble, and some people will pick up, oh, yeah, that's what I wanted to know. Oh, I understand it, but I don't, admit to it. And then, like I said, maybe I can clarify it one-on-one a little bit for you. So the offer is there. Anybody, I'd be happy to help out.
Steve, let's throw it open to the room here. So thank you for that. I mean, what you've talked about tonight is a lifetime of, as you say, chasing DX and having fun. And DX means different things to different people. When you're first starting off in the hobby, working DX is working the other side of Europe. When you've been in the hobby a little bit of while, for us in Europe, working into the United States is DX. And then after a bit of time, working to the west coast of the US is DX, and so on. And, we can all have those moments. I mean, Ian's in the room here tonight, our club secretary, not that long licensed. And he was so pleased a couple of weeks ago when we ran one of our field days on the field. You can see in the picture behind me. We're working a station portable with a wire antenna next to his car, was working into Japan. First time he'd ever worked Japan in his life on CW, and was having QSOs with several Japanese stations, and then other parts of definitely what all of us would regard as what all of us would regard as DX. So I think it's different for everyone. So let's chuck it out to the room. Anyone got a question or comment for Steve that he could try and answer for you now? Don't all be shy. Anyone got a question to put to Steve or a comment?
Yeah.
Yes, go on.
Hi, Steve. How are you? I'm just wondering, what's your QTH?
I'm in southern New Jersey. If you have a map, look at Atlantic City, and I'm about 7 miles from Atlantic City, New Jersey. And it's a good location for DX. Not the best I've ever had, but it's close enough to the ocean, and that makes a big difference. One of my homes, I was in North Cape May. If you look at a map of New Jersey, North Cape May is the very southern tip. And I was about a quarter of a mile from Delaware Bay on the west, and about a half a mile from the Atlantic on the east. And I had people telling me I was running barefoot with my little bitty tower, and they were telling me I had the strongest signal into Europe. So that also helps. Antennas and transmitters and power and all that. If you got a lousy location, it's not going to help. I learned that for 20 years. My wife and I had worked for a bank for a while, and they transferred us to Charlotte, North Carolina. And for the first time, we were not within driving range that I consider driving range to go to the ocean. We were 4.5 hours to the ocean. And as opposed to, hopping on my bicycle and going there. and the propagation, the conditions were so much different. Even though it was still the East Coast of the United States, we were 600 miles southeast of where I am now, and that the QTH makes a big difference. Did I answer your question? That was a long. You gotta bear with me. My wife usually when I start talking to people, she steps inside and says, you gotta be protected here. I'll stop you. Stop him from talking. He's Irish.
Yeah, thanks for that, Steve.
Okay.
Thank you, Michael. All right. Anyone else with a question or comment to put to Steve while we've got him in the room here tonight?
Yeah, I'd like to go, Nick. If I
Yes,
can.
go on, Andy. Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Steve. Brilliant talk. I've learned quite a lot. I only got my license in 2020, so fairly new. But I've learned something about the working split. I'm really glad you mentioned it, because my thoughts of it were that they only work, say, 5 split. Well, you've told me tonight that they work in a band 5 to 10, so you can obviously go anywhere in that band and transmit back to them, which is very interesting. I just thought they worked on a set frequency split.
Yeah. No, it's not exactly 5. Okay, when they say up 5, that's the starting point. Okay, and one of the best things you can do is, before you transmit, don't even listen to the DX station. Go up and listen up and down through the people calling him. And when you hear somebody that just worked them, put your transmitter on that frequency and give that a shot. Sometimes it's good to find a nice clear hole, but sometimes you can't. But if you get an idea where he is listening, actually, he'll say, up 5. But if you see him work somebody who's up 12, at least it gives you an idea of his limit. He's not just doing 5 to 10 up. He's doing 12 or a little bit more. If he does give a range, like up 5 to 15, a lot of guys will hang out at the high and low ends. Personally, I like smack dab in the middle, because if he's tuning his rig up and down, he's got to go past me twice. Okay. Whereas if I'm up at the end, he's only going to hit me when he gets up that end, and then he leaves me, and he's got to go all the way back down to the other end and come back. So keep it in mind. I mean, it's never the same twice. Okay. You got to play with it. But the most important thing, and a lot of guys don't understand, of course, you'll hear what we call the police on the DXpeditions frequency, and they're shouting up, 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 because somebody is transmitting on his frequency. And there's 2 reasons for that. There's 3 reasons. One is that they don't have their VFO set correctly. 2, they don't understand split. And 3, they're just stupid. Okay, next.
Yeah, cheers, Steve. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks,
just
Andy.
one-
Yeah,
just-
Mike. I've got Mike and then Darren. Go on, Mike.
Yeah, hi, Steve. Thank you very much for the lecture. Very good. Can I just ask basically 2 questions? I looked at your QRZ page, and it says no EQSL. I wonder what you have a view on that. And also, do you think that DXing has become easier with radios with band scopes on them now for looking for split?
Well, as far as EQSL, I've had, I won't call them bad experiences with that, but it's a secondary way of QSLing, and there are some awards that accept it. The ones that I deal with, that I go for, don't accept EQSL because it's not 100% verified contacts. There's not enough control, and that's the one problem I have with it. I mean, guys are sending me EQSLs, I have no way of using them for anything. So that's why I shy away from EQSL now. If somebody really begs and pleads and everything, I'll put it out for them. But that's why I ended up putting that on my QRZ page. It's just if you want my card bad enough, you can send me one. And I QSL, I have always QSL 100%. However you send your card to me, I'll send it to you. If you use the bureau, if you send it direct, up until 10 years ago, 5 years ago, when did I retire? When the money started getting tight, I always QSL. Even somebody sent me a self-addressed envelope with no postage, I would still send the card back to them. Okay. Or if they sent me one without an envelope, just as a postcard, I would send it back to them. There was no problem with that. It got to the point, though, with some of the contests, I would get, there was one contest, a New Jersey QSO party. I happened to win it that year. And, people are looking for the New Jersey counties. And Atlantic is one of the not rare, but lesser occupied counties. And out of my 300 contacts, I got nearly 200 QSLs. And a lot of them, they were new guys, didn't understand that, if you really want somebody else's QSL, think about including a self-addressed envelope or a self-addressed stamped envelope if you're in the same country. And I would make a note on that, that I would do it, but, Okay, who's that? Ian.
So before I run, so the second question is, with radios now with band scopes in them, does that make it easier to look for, +5 or 10 above the DX frequency?
I don't know. I have one with it, and I don't use it. I like my ears, I don't know. Some guys have their heads glued to that screen on. I'd rather just have the headphones on and just listen for what I'm hearing. Occasionally, I won't say I won't. In a contest, I will take a peek at it. And if I see, some big pileup, I'll investigate it because there's got to be a reason for that. But I don't use it. But I know other guys do. How's that for an answer?
Thank you, Mike. Darren, and then I'll put Ian's question to you. Darren.
Well, believe it or not, that's just about covered my question, because what I was about to say was, I find the band scope very useful, because if you're looking at it, you can normally see the DX station transmit on the frequency, and going back to the station is going back to fairly easily. And I found it very useful to do that. You can soon move your second VFO stroke receiver onto that frequency. So, like I say, it just about covered my question anyway.
All right, lovely. Thanks, Darren. Yeah, Ian is just sent a message saying he's been enjoying listening while in his car. And he said, I received an unsolicited QSL from Japan today, celebrating my first QSL in Japan. We were just talking about it. Taking my very special collection of cards to 5. There is always some magic with every contact, but which one has meant the most to you?
Oh, I think there's a bunch of them. I ran through some of them. Hold a second. I spoke to my father. He was in London, and he stopped in a Ham's shack, and he got hold of a guy in the States, and the guy in the States gave me a phone call, and we had that contact. And maybe about 4 days later, he was gone. He died in London. And I never quite got to say goodbye to him. But on the other hand, I did get to say 73. And that's the way I put it to Hams. Excuse me, another problem of being Irish. So that is one of my most memorable contacts. I think talking to King Hussein, because my dad had worked him, okay, which is, it's a little needle in the spine there when your father works something and you don't. So I ran across his QSL manager, Mary Ann, WA3HUP, and I said, and I explained the situation. She says, well, I'm making a schedule with Hussein this afternoon to go over some QSLs and everything. And at the end, he always picks up some stations. So if you're there, at the end, just give me a shout and I'll get him through to you. So I showed up I was a kid at the time. We were downstairs in our basement. I had my dad, my mom, and I think one of my brothers looking over my shoulder while I was making the contact. And Mary Ann called me and said, Steve, are you there? And I said, yeah, I'm here. And she says, okay, JY1, please listen for WB2VFT. And I called him. And he came right back to me. We had a very nice, short contact. And I thanked Mary Ann and everything. And it was really, that was an exciting contact. Then we have the problem that he didn't log me. So, and I've seen his logs. My friend Bob N200 has the JY1 logs. And I went through that log with a fine-tooth comb, and I was not in it. So I had the contact, but it wasn't logged. So, it's kind of bittersweet. Okay.
Lovely, thank you. Yeah, Ian, I'm sure that you enjoyed that. Steve, that was a very moving story about your dad. And I'll just add my one to it. It wasn't quite a contact. At my dad's funeral a few years ago now, we finished it off with, we'd had music at various stages, and we finished off at the end. I'd recorded some Morse code from him, just saying 73s from Mike, G3UYY, ARSK, ending the contact. And then I said, and we'd printed it out on the memorial card to people. And so I explained what SK meant, and my dad was now a silent key. And as we were going out of the room afterwards, the priest came up to me and he said to me, that was the most moving moment I've ever had in a funeral, he said. And for someone to explain as you did so gently to everyone that your dad's now a silent key, he said, I don't know how I stopped myself from crying. So similar experience. It's really strange, isn't it? I don't think I've told that story to anyone ever. Only my family would know to came to my dad's funeral. But there are some things in amateur radio which are deeply moving to us, whether that is your first contact in Japan, whether it's, as you've just related, Steve, your last contact with your dad before he sadly passed on. And we've all got various things in our life that we can probably relate to amateur radio, and I know I can as well at various stages of my life. So thank you for that comment, Steve. Anyone else got a question to Steve before we wish Steve a pleasant evening and thanking him for coming along? Anyone else want a quick question to Steve? Yeah, Roger, go on.
Hi, Steve. In the same vein of sort of special places, I remember listening for the first time to somebody in Antarctica, I wonder if there are other places in the world that you'd still like to contact, and the special kind of places, not necessarily just the expeditions, but places where few people are.
Well, there's a lot of places, even in our own country. And on 6 meters, that's one thing that is very difficult, because we hunt grids. Of course, I need Alaska and Hawaii on 6 meters. I've got the other 48, but within the lower 48, there are a lot of rare grids that, every time I work one, it's the same excitement. And that's what I say about this hobby. There's always a place where you can find something new, whether it's amateur TV, which I can't say I never got into. When I was in high school, one of our club members had amateur TV. Now, this is a kid, 13 years old, built his amateur TV station. And I learned a lot about that. But, that's one thing about DX. Like I said in the beginning, DX doesn't have to be some faraway country. If you're on 6 meters, hey, my first 6 meter contact was in Pennsylvania. And to me, that was DX for that moment, for that 6 meter contact. I've worked all the DXCC countries, but I have 3 outstanding, and I have to look at the wall here. On CW, I still need Scarborough Reef. If you know what that is, it's a bunch of rocks out in the South China Sea that is claimed by China, Philippines, Vietnam, Taiwan, and somebody else. P5, North Korea, which you never know. There have been a couple I do have it on phone. There was a guy from one of the Soviet satellites went there and operated phone, but he'd never worked at ECW. And one that is the sticking point is Prince Edward and Marion Islands down in the South Atlantic. It used to be that, they always had a guy working there that had a ham license, it seemed. Well, lately, they don't have them. So when somebody shows up there, they're usually a lower class licensee, and they don't do CW. So, those are 3 places that I've talked to, but I need it on CW. So that's going to be a thrill if I ever work one of them.
Right. Good luck with that then. Cheers.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, good luck with North Korea, Steve.
Yeah.
But as you say, you never know, do you? You absolutely never know.
When the guy showed up from North Korea, well, first Marty Lane, OH2BH, went there, and he had a demonstration. He made a few contacts, and then we thought this was going to be the big break open, and it never happened. And then this other guy, 4L, I wish I could remember his call. He showed up, and of course he was on the air, and nobody believed that he was real. So I worked him anyway. And about a week later, he provided the documentation that he had permission to be operating. And that's what everything comes down to. I mean, you could be in a place, but if you don't have permission to be there, it ain't gonna count. So yeah, like you said, you never know. I'm only 72 years old. I can wait.
Okay. Anyone else with another question to Steve before we wrap it up? If not, can we all thank Steve very much indeed for a very entertaining discussion tonight, Steve. That was very good.
Thank you, Steve.
Well, thank you very much, Steve.
I meant to check the chat every now and then, but I forgot to. See, I'm not a good Zoomer. But let me see. Anybody I missed something? Yeah, I haven't mentioned it, but my XYL got her license. A total surprise. Now, my first wife, she tolerated the radio, if you know what I mean. My second wife, we were friends, and she came over to my house. I mean, we were divorced at the time, and she came over and she laid on the floor and listened to me operating a contest with my quote radio voice. So then we moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, and had been there for a while. And when we were going to a ham fest there, and she very nonchalantly turns to me and says, where do they give the license tests? And I said, oh, over in that building over there. And I said, why? She says, because I'm going to take it. Well, she did. She's got her technician license, W2CDS. So if you ever hear W2CDS on 10 meters, that's my girl. So anyway, and I'll wrap up with that. Thank you guys very much. And the ladies that were too. This has been a thrill for me. It's the first time I've ever done anything like this. Hopefully I didn't talk your ear off too much. I hope I didn't babble too much. And again, the opening is there. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email, KZ2I@AOL.com. I'd be happy to, answer any questions you have. And I got to give a blast. I forgot, to South Jersey DX Association. They wouldn't have got me into this. Okay, I'm done, Nick.
Brilliant, Steve. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
73 to you.
Nicholas, what is your call sign?
G3IOI.
IOI. That sounds awful familiar. And is Michael still there?
Yeah, I'm here. Unfortunately, I don't have my full license yet.
What's your? Oh, you don't have your call sign yet?
No, I don't.
Okay. Well, good luck. I hope to hear you on the air sometime.
Yeah.
If you hear me, just say, yeah, I was there when you were blathering on.
Yeah.
I will indeed.
As far as I'm concerned, I'm not on SSB very much these days, but because of my advancing years, my CW is slower. But I was a commercial telegraphist in years gone by.
So that's sort of how I got into ham radio, because the novice class in the United States back in the old days was administered by a general class licensee. All the other licenses, you had to go to the FCC office. So you had to send the way off to the FCC. They would send you a sealed envelope stamped with the FCC stamp and everything. And you had 30 days to take the test.
Right.
I was 13 at the time. Basically, I chickened out. My dad was a radio man on a destroyer during World War II. And he, of course, knew the code. He studied the theory real quick, and he got his license. I got mine about 6 months later. But I thought it was very clever on my part, because by the time I got my license, he had set up the station. So I didn't have to worry about doing that.
Right. Well, I was a railway operator.
I've got, that's something you'd probably love then. Here, let me swing this around.
And right, yes. Yes. And on the railway we use sounders. Yeah, hang on. I got one here somewhere. Here you are. That's a sounder.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what we used to use. And I was with the Great Western Railway
Your call sounds awful familiar to me. Yes, I have worked. Well, I worked G3I. Is that it?
Yeah,
Okay, I have the name is Ray.
yes,
Okay.
that is correct.
I worked you back in 2009 on 40 CW.
Well, I never.
Fantastic.
That's why I took everybody's calls down, because I wanted to see if I worked there.
Yes, great.
So anyway,
I'm not quite so organized as you, Steve.
well, see, that's the one advantage of a digital log is you can find somebody like that. If I had to go through my log and try to find somebody, it would be, on paper, it would be impossible to do it. Let me see here. How many contacts do I have in my log? Let me see. That's not what I wanted. This is what I wanted. I have 100,404 contacts in my log.
Well,
What logbook are you using, Steve?
I'm using N3 FJP's log,
Okay, I don't know that one. I'll have a look.
amateur contact log. He has a whole suite of programs that are, he started it out for, he wrote this program for himself. And then some friends borrowed it. And then he said, well, maybe I'll just, put it out there. So he started doing it, and he charges a single fee, and he's got 40 or 50 logging programs for all contests. He's got a main log, the AC log, which has, all your contacts in it. And then he's got a log for all the major contests and non-major contests. And he's the nicest guy in the world. He keeps it up to date. Him and his wife were doing it. He and his wife were doing it. And then now he's got his kids involved in it. So it's a great, easy to use logging program. I know his K1MM has a good program, and that one's free. Like I said, the one thing I looked around when I was looking for online log, because I had all these paper logs, and I was looking around, and one thing that I found with the FJP is he had a little utility that would take a Excel spreadsheet and convert it to the ADI type file that you load into the logs. And so that's what I did. I typed all my paper logs into Excel spreadsheets and then loaded them out, and I've been using it ever since. I mean, it's probably been 20 years I've been using this log.
Good. It's interesting because most logs are either a good general log or they're a good contest log. Very few do both. I use log4OM as a general log and N1MM for contesting, but it's nice to know there is one out there that does both.
Oh yeah. And like I said, for a single fee, you can buy just the AC log, okay? But if you want all the contest ones, his whole suite, it's a single fee, and you're good for life. He says, if you want to send me a contribution every now and then but he keeps everything up to date. He has changed the formatting of the programming 3 times since I've had it, updating to a better, faster programming language. And he's just a nice guy. I speak very highly of him. And if you have a question, no matter how stupid it is, he'll answer it.
We can all find stupid questions.
Oh, yeah, I'm very good at that. Well, guys, I got to run upstairs. Thank you very much. I have enjoyed this immensely. Maybe now that I know where you are, I can find you again. And maybe I'll stop in and see you. And I've got to give Bob a thank you for pointing me towards you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Steve. And I'm delighted that you were able to confirm that QSO with Nicholas Pascoe there, G3 IOI. That's fantastic on the Zoom call tonight.
Okay, well,
Brilliant.
everybody,
Cheers, Steve.
be good.
Good night, Chip. 73.
And my
And,
sign
all the
off,
best.
my sign off is this, and I have had people question it, but I always tell people, stay out of trouble. I had one woman say, "What have you heard?" So, all right, be good.
Cheers,
All the
Steve.
best. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.